I know you like to touch on fuck ups. One of the fuck ups that I don't think I've never found any kind of thing that's like, oh yeah, this was it. Like I never got that aha moment of being like, oh shit, I fucked that up. I never got that,
Yeah.
but I had a 3408 lockup on the dyno. Built it, tested it, like everything looked good. They were running it, ran good for its first initial run. Like there's a procedure before they don't just start it and run it balls of the wall. Like, they kind of ease into it. They run a break,
Yep.
a start, initial start, look for leaks, all that stuff. And then they run it balls at the wall eventually for about an hour. Well, this thing had just passed all of its checks. It was running fine. And they were getting ready to lay into it. Like he was getting it warmed back up to temp. And I actually know the guy who's running it that night. He was like, "Yeah, I heard a pitch change in the engine, and when I looked through the window, it was just white smoke pouring out of the breathers." And I was just like, "Fuck." This is when I went over there to get it, and he's telling me this, and I'm looking at the engine, just like, "Come on, man, please just don't be something stupid." Never found out what it was. What ended up happening though was, what we suspect happened is we essentially ended up with a bad bearing, which is really hard to narrow down to be like that was a bad bearing because they typically get destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was tearing that engine down, literally like I was investigating a crime. And that's the
At
way it
least you
is if you're
got to
doing.
investigate it.
Oh yeah. Well, so I tore it down with our service analyst and with my supervisor basically standing over my shoulder the whole time. But I'm like taking pictures of everything, pull the oil pan off, take a picture of the underside, break break torque on my main caps, take a picture of those, take a pic, like literally pull an oil plug out of the galley, take a picture of the plug face, take a picture of the galley with my light in there, like looking for anything. Never found a single thing that was like, oh, that was put together dirty, or that was fucked up, or the bearing was backwards, or nothing. And that one still irks me to this day. Like it threw me bad. So the next couple of engines I built, I was like, I remember the next one that I built, my supervisor was like, "You get your groove back, you feel good." Because the whole time I was like, "Hey, come out, check this. Come look at this. Make sure I did this right."
Yeah.
Like I'm second guessing myself at this
Yep.
point, right? And it was a couple engines before I was like, "I got this, man." Like I'm going back together the
It's
same
hard to
old
get your
self. But
confidence back when you
oh,
fuck something up
absolutely.
like that, like majorly fuck something up like that, which
It
everybody
was,
does, right?
yeah,
Everybody goes through that. And that's like, if you work at the right shop, they're going to encourage you to use those as learning lessons and encourage you to
absolutely.
learn from it and encourage you to not beat yourself up over it too much. I know there's definitely shops out there that, like, if you fuck something up like that, they're going to be down your fucking ass and make you feel fucking horrible for it.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's just not like, if you want that mechanic to be fucking scared to touch another engine for like the next year, that's the way to do it.
Well,
But
too, there's also shops that, well, to anybody listening to this who might be looking into the trade and worried about that, or this is something that they're kind of worried about. Again, like Melissa's saying, there is a degree um of error that's expected. Shops
yeah.
don't expect you to be perfect. But if you keep fucking up, it doesn't have to be the same thing either. Like if you fucked up a couple different things over your time and there happens to be a breaking point, like there was a guy when I first started, he was on the sauce a lot. So there were some mornings you'd work next to him and you're like, Jesus, dude, you need to go fucking go home or take a nap or something. Like I can
Yeah.
smell off of like just emanating from you. Like you stepped out of a brewery just a second ago. Come
Yep.
on, dude.
I've worked with
But
someone like that.
that dude fucked up a 3412 that he had rebuilt, and 3400 engines, the rod bolt doesn't have like a bolt head. It's like a bolt with a little half moon kind of oblong weird shape, one half moon smaller than the other half moon, and then you have your nut on the actual rod side. So your cap side has the half moons, your rod side has the nut. Well, when he assembled this engine, he got those backwards on like 4 packs out of the 12. Don't know how, no idea why he didn't realize, like they were all torqued to spec, but or no, sorry, I have the rod and the nut backwards. The half moon goes on the rod and the nut goes on the cap. But anyway, like you could see the threads, or you couldn't even see the threads protruding from the nut on the remaining caps. But what ended up happening is they started it in the shop before they pulled it out to load test it, right? Because it was a rebuild and they were going to let it get to temp, check it for leaks, all that stuff. And we used to have the video on the computers at work, but somebody had the foresight to put their phone up and record it. And so there's everybody in the shops listening to this. And I started, it was a small shop. It was there actually shortly before I started too. But there's like all 5 of them in there. They're all walking around this engine, listening to it. What is that tick? Where's it coming from? Is it a timing gear? Is it the fuel pump? Because it was a mechanical pump, trying to figure out what's going on. Like, did he fuck up an overhead? Like everybody's listening. Is it the generator end? Is that what's going on? No idea. And it's running at 1800 RPM. It's rated speed. And it just like you can hear it like, and then in the video you can see the chunk of the block and the cap go flying across the shop.
It windowed it. Damn.
Oh, it windowed the fuck out of it. And it literally, like, there was another guy, one of the guys was standing in that exact spot about 5 seconds prior. So he would have taken that right to the gut. And
yeah, that would have been a bad day.
That dude got a week of unpaid vacation. Like, go home, we'll see you next Monday kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't get PTO. You don't, like, you got to think about what you did, because the company had to eat that. They had to eat
there's a big difference between, yeah, there's such a big difference. And I've learned this with working with apprentices, fucking my own shit up, working with other mechanics. There's such a big difference between an honest mistake and a genuine, like, they just didn't know or didn't pay attention, or like, just because we're humans, we make errors. There's such a big difference between that and just straight up negligence. And I've worked with a mechanic that was on the sauce pretty heavy, and he was the same way. Like, you could tell he was showing up to work drunk and shit like that. And he, like, granted, never blew up an engine, but he backed through the bay door with a dozer because he wasn't paying attention. Yeah, and he, like, I don't know if you heard this part of the story, but like when he was trying to split a loader, then he had a floor jack on there. He was trying to split a loader, and like, I don't know why, because we had giant overhead cranes in the shop. It was a nice shop. Yeah. And this particular loader, you can literally pick up the entire front end, which does not articulate, right? So it's easier because it's solid on the front. You could literally pick up the whole front end and move it. Or like support it with the crane, right, and roll it. Like, so easy to do it that way. Don't know why he decided he was going to pull the back end away, which I think is harder, because not only does it fucking have that articulation, or not articulation, the oscillation, but it's also way heavier.
You got the counterweight, you got the engine, the trans.
Exactly. And you can't just support that with the crane. That's too heavy. So this dumbass has got like a floor jack underneath the front of it that he had pumped up. A floor jack. We all know the joke of how well those roll on the floors, right? We all know those roll like shit, right? It's literally like, we'll make you go deaf trying to drag it through the shop. Anyways, he's got this fucking floor jack in the front, and he doesn't block the oscillation or anything. He just puts the floor jack in the front and then grabs the back end of this loader with a fucking forklift and has somebody else pull it with the forklift while he's under there watching. Oh. This motherfucker almost died, because guess what that floor jack didn't do? Roll with the machine. So it fucking fell. The whole loader, like the whole front part of the back end of the loader fucking fell. Almost crushed him. Almost crushed him. He did that. He was also the guy that would like crawl up, and it wasn't even big excavators, because like I was telling my boyfriend this the other day, like judging whether or not you need to be tied off on a machine, like the way I do it is like, if it's a really, really big platform and I feel safe, I might not tie myself off. But if it's like super narrow and it's already skinny and I'm already like, and it's really high, like an excavator, I'm probably gonna tie myself off. This guy, I don't even know why he was doing this, because on this particular excavator, you definitely like, he's putting like an HKX kit on it. You can do those, like, you can just like curl the bucket under and like put it on the ground. It wasn't even that big of a fucking excavator. But he was on the arm, like in the air.
What?
Fucking like trying to push shit on. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? He also would like he was trying to take boom sections out of a telehandler. And I don't know if you've ever worked on a telehandler before or a crane, but they have wear pads on the sides of the sections. Yeah, you have to unbolt those to get the sections out. Sections don't just come out.
Oh, like, so you have to unbolt.
Yeah, he was just fucking yanking. Not only was he just yanking on it like a motherfucker with another telehandler, but he was using a strap that was already halfway to cut through.
Jesus.
And then he wondered why he got fired. But like, it's like, so
Well, I mean,
some people, like those mistakes were like just deliberate not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and like you say, there is a difference. Like if you actually are uneducated about something, and you make an effort to become educated about a mistake, you try to learn about what happened, how it happened, how you can stop it from happening again. That's different than if you're just the guy who said, well, I grew up doing it this way, or
yep.
this is the way I'm going to do it. I don't care what the book says. Like there is a fine line. And the thing is you gotta understand. And as a guy who comes from where things are super strict, so the flight line in the Marine Corps, it's getting into like knowledge and questions and so on. They do what's called a wing and a CNAF inspection. So I was in a MALS, which is a Marine Air Logistics Squadron. We supported all the combat operating squadrons for whatever our aircraft type was. Down there in Pendleton, it happened to be we had Hueys, we had Cobras, and before they retired them, the Frogs, before they got the V-22s in. But we supported all of them. So all of our support equipment was everything that they needed. So we had to maintain a better class of everything than they did. So, for example, our hydraulic fluid, we have contamination control standards. Our machines had to pass a patch test or a pods test later. I mean, I'm talking old school patch samples. If you've ever had to pull a patch sample, you know how fucking annoying it is. But literally, this is also where it's on a flight line. Everything has to be accounted for. You use one of those patch pads, you have to account for that patch pad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like there's no rags. You don't just have towels, shop towels. You have to check out rags from tool room and then check them in when you're done. Like
Yeah.
we spent the amount of, if you think about it, the amount of labor money that was wasted doing stupid shit like that is just unbelievable. Like every
Yeah.
morning we would do what's called a FOD walk for an object debris or damage, depending on who you talk to and whatever the fucking nearest poster says. But you would literally, everybody in the entire fucking unit would line up on one end of, for us, it was our compound, but you would see them in the flight line. It was actually kind of cool. Pendleton, we would get these misty marine layer mornings where it was like weirdly foggy and misty kind of until like right about when it's time to go PT, and then it's 105. But
Yeah.
you would see them in the morning, and they would just, you'd hear like echoes of people just yelling "FOD," and the echo or "walk, stop," and then you just like see your eyes are straining, and you'd see these ghostly figures, just this line of ghostly figures just advancing out of the fog. It was kind of creepy. But getting back to it, like how strict everything was, we would do these wing inspections, and then if you passed wing inspection, you would do a CNAF, Commander Naval Air Forces inspection. So picture that as being like at a dealer level. So my dealership, let's say we did a regional dealer inspection. So everybody west of the Mississippi or whatever the region is, I don't remember exactly what it is. The representative, like they had, let's say they sent a team out to inspect that, which they do, but just for certain, like your entire program, everything, your QA program, your QC program, your freaking oil contaminant program, like all that. Let's say they send somebody out. All right, you pass that inspection. Now, Mama Cat in wherever the hell they moved, they used to be Peoria, but Mama Cat sends their team out at that point if you pass that inspection, right? So this is like they literally shut squadrons down, that kind of stuff.
Damn.
So like if you fail wing inspection, your local wing, 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, would come in and be like, hey, we're gonna freaking square you away. Let's get these programs back on track. If you fail CNAF, they will shut down, ground your birds, take everybody's quals away until everybody meets the bar.
Damn.
During those inspections, inspectors will walk around and like, so I managed the hide contaminant program, the hazmat program, my work center, which also had tire and wheel, and I was a CDQAR or CDI, sorry, not CDQ, collateral duty inspector. So I was like QA more or less. They would walk up and ask one of my Marines, hey, what's the torque for that wheel nut that you're doing right now? And if one of my Marines was like, oh, it's 120 foot-pound, they would ding you right there. Because what they wanted to see, it didn't matter if it was 120 or not, they wanted to see that Marine go to the physical paper copy
And
book
check.
that we had and say, according to Nav Air Attack, whatever, chapter this, paragraph this, subsection this, note this, it is this, and you torque it in this procedure or this pattern, right? So like coming from that level of scrutiny to the dealership is it's easy to get carried away. It's easy to see what's promised, and it's easy to see where you need to do that, but it's also easy to not let it happen anymore. Like you're like, I've done all that shit. I don't want to do it again, kind of.
Yeah.
So like, I don't even remember what the original point was. We got off on a tangent talking about shit on the flight line that nobody really cares about. But yeah,
That's
anyway.
all this podcast is a bunch of stories.
Well, I mean, the real kicker is when you're ADD too. So you end up like starting a story, and then you'll just chase this rabbit hole, and you have no idea where the entrance to the hole is. You just know it's dark as fuck, and you have no idea where you are. Like,
yeah, I'm not even eight. Maybe I am. I don't know. Honestly, I've never
you might
checked,
be.
but I do the same fucking thing.
Yeah,
I like start a story, and then that story reminds me of another story, and by the time I've told 10 stories, I've completely fucking forgot about the original story.
Well, here's the surefire way to know. When you were still turning wrenches for a professional career, how often would you find yourself, you would get back to your box or you'd get back to your machine, you'd be
and
like,
forget.
what the fuck was I doing?
So much.
Like the second you turn away, you don't even remember. Like you're lucky you even remember where you are. You just
I don't remember what tool I was going for. I don't remember what I was doing. I have a complete blank in my brain now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so many times.
Yeah,
you know how many tools I've spent like 10 or 15 minutes looking for because I could have swore I left it in a spot and I didn't.
Yeah.
Or parts. Yeah, so many times.
It gets even more fun when you like the one thing that I used to do whenever I drop a tool in the shop is immediately shut the fuck up. Like you would, if you slipped a tool or something and like you passed out of your line of sight, you just deathly quiet because you're waiting for the sound of it hitting the fucking floor. You're just like, did it make it? Or you might be able to auditorily pinpoint where it's at. Well, it gets way crazier in the field because you drop a tool and you're just like, I hope it doesn't hit the ground. You
don't know if it hit the dirt. Yeah.
Because I don't know where the fuck it's going to be. And you get down there and it's like buried in the mud or something and you'd have no idea where it's at. Like, oh no, it's good times, man. But
I have ADD or like ADHD or whatever, like working on things too, because I have to watch myself on big jobs because if I'm not careful, it's not necessarily like, if I'm doing a big job where I'm doing these steps and then reversing those steps, I'm cool. But if I get to where I have a loader that I did an inspection on and I wrote up like 10 things, I will fucking start and stop so many fucking things at once. And it's horrible because like I want to be efficient. That's also part of it. Like I want to make time and I want to like, make use of my time. So I'll start something and then I'm like, fuck, I'm waiting on parts. So I start something else. I'm like, fuck, I'm waiting on parts. Then instead of going back to the other job that I now have parts for, I'm like, I'm start on this because I know how to do that. And I know I can get a lot of it done today. And then like my boss comes out and he's like, why is this entire loader just I thought you were going to do the axle and then do this. It's like, no, I just started all of it at once. It's fine.
Well, that's
cool.
So like
I'll figure it out.
This one that I'm putting back together, it's a bunch of little tiny things at this point. All the big shit's done, but I keep going back to it and it's like, oh shit, I still need to do that. Like it's mostly done. I just need to do that. And so I'll like go and do that real quick, completely forgetting that I was just almost done with this other thing. Like, oh fuck, I need to connect these AC lines up real quick so I can put it in a vacuum and then I can hold it in vacuum while I work on this other thing. And instead of doing any of that, I'll like replace the sight glass on the radiator or something like that because it needed to get done. And I noticed it when I was going to get the hose for the like, it's a deal. I'll tell you that.
Maybe I have ADD.
Oh no.
Sound. That's clear. But like everything you just explained, it's like, yep. Exactly what happens to me.
So I don't know if this is like any HIPAA thing or anything like that, but I remember telling my doctor about that, and he was like, well, what makes you think you have ADD? And I was like, well, for one, as a kid, I had ADHD that was clinically signed off, and I explained basically all that, and he was like, yeah, you don't even need to fill this paper out. Like, we're gonna start you on this and this and that. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks, man. Like, hopefully this helps because it's fucking frustrating. Because you'll also get hyper focused. Have you ever had that where you literally will be doing something that doesn't need to be as detailed or whatever, but you can't seem to break yourself from it. Like that's a problem
I
where,
do that with valve adjustments.
oh yeah,
I,
yeah.
I can't just sit there and run a fucking valve adjustment.
Yeah, the mechanic
I
is like,
will
oh, just
sit
slap an
there.
overhead on it. Mm-mm.
Yep. I'll sit there and fucking like well, first off, I don't trust myself to remember shit. So I have like laminated printouts of like every
Nice.
engine, and like it has the sequences for TDC1 and TDC6. And then I write the specification on there. That's really all I need. Unless it's some bullshit Isuzu thing that has like the valve bridge and the fucking valve stem adjustment or
Oh,
something
those
like
are
that.
fun.
Then I'll print out the whole thing. I fucking hate
Yeah.
those. But I had this like ADHD thing with it, or like the super like maybe hyper focus is the correct term for it. I can't just run a valve adjustment. I have to like put it on TDC 1 or 6. Honestly, it doesn't matter when I start it, but I have to start with the smallest number cylinder and then go to the biggest, and then I have my 2 feeler gauges, and I will sit there and retest over and over again and make my new changes. So it's like fucking nuts, like tits. And then I turn it over to the other top dead center, and then I panic because I don't have a reference anymore.
Yeah.
So then I have to try to remember exactly the feeling the last one
you're
was.
like, you're getting that
because it
pull
has
and
to be
it's like,
perfect.
is that how it was? Do I need to borrow it over again? Check. Should I?
Yep.
I think I should. And you're like convincing yourself not to.
Yep.
Been there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I can't just do without just.
Oh, but no, anyway, no, what I was getting at, I think we were talking about rebuilding that governor.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember what the point was there, but I'll tell you what, like maybe it was the satisfaction of it. So being able to do that kind of stuff myself, that was one thing. I have built a number of fuel system, mechanical fuel systems on the 3408 engines. This was my first 3306 engine that I'd rebuilt a governor on, but it's all the same concept. The only difference is this had an air fuel ratio control and a dash pod, which the industrial engines don't because they run at a steady RPM. That's basically it. They don't really fluctuate RPM unless you load it the fuck up, but they're not, going from 1,000 to 2,400 or whatever it is. Like that loader had a high end of 2,350, I think, was the high idle. But building that, using that knowledge and the resources, like, because I'd done a lot of book reading, I'd done a lot of OJT at this point, but I'd never actually adjusted my own. So I read through all the procedures and everything, and I wasn't comfortable. This is actually one thing I haven't posted the story yet, but I want to talk about the benefits of being a dealer well, in my experience is I asked, I was like, hey, I'm not 100% comfortable with this. Do you have somebody who can come out and maybe walk me through it and like show and like, oh, yeah, fuck yeah, we'll send the service analyst out. And the dude was like remembering as he was doing it, he was like, I think we need this tool. Like before you come up here, grab all these tools. And so I'm up there and but the satisfaction of as he's doing it and as we're doing the testing, he's showing me how to do it at the end of it. He's like, yeah, it runs like a champ, no problems whatsoever. Like that's something else because it's a
very
good fucking
gratifying
feeling.
work. It's very gratifying. It's
Absolutely.
It's like instant gratification, right? Because you start it and then you finish it and then it's either good or it's not. Or like figuring out a problem and diagnosing, like if you diagnose something and then you fix it and then it actually fixes it, like that's like instant gratification. It's a very rewarding job. I've always told people that.
It's kind of funny because I know I don't remember if it was your podcast or another one. Somebody was talking about like where they get to the point where they're starting to throw parts at stuff. So like I've seen technicians do that. Now, one of the things that is supposed to set Caterpillar apart from a lot of people is they are huge on root cause analysis. So they have advanced failure analysis and failure analysis, sorry, or applied failure analysis, AFA1 and AFA2. And they teach a whole week-long class in each of them about finding root cause for things. And I'm talking like all the way down to kind of what I mentioned, like failure modes as far as like, oh, that's an elastic failure, or that's as far as metallurgy is concerned. You learn about like how different metals are hardened, how to look for marks of heat, like what certain temperature gradient colorations are produced depending on whatever happened, and it's it's so much knowledge that like you don't, unless you go out and you reapply it that very fucking next week, you're not going to remember
Yeah.
most of it.
Yeah.
But that was that's
It's still
definitely one of
cool
the
to
things
learn.
that, man, I love it. I love, and like you're talking about, like getting to that point, using those toolbox, the technician toolbox, as it were.
Yeah.
You're not just a mechanic, you're a technician. Using those kind of tools, that's so satisfying, being able to be like, oh shit, this is it. Like I found the root cause. Like, oh, I got a joystick that's not working. Yeah, you can throw a joystick in it, but I find that I tend to go the extra mile and just like, well, I'm going to throw a circuit tester on there and find where it loses continuity to double
I
check and
wish
make
we could
sure
do
kind of
that
stuff. And
in deer.
it's
They
really interesting.
don't let us do that in deer. Like I gauge doing swap. I've talked about swap gnostics. I call it swap gnostics on here
I like it.
before. It's John Deere is not. They don't care why it failed. They just
Yeah.
want you to fucking fix it, right? And that's kind of how the whole company works in general. But like, so with the swap gnostics, like if it's gonna take me, if the sensor is $60, and I'm pretty sure that's what it is, that, or not even that, I guess that's a bad example. Scratch that. It's 2 solenoids on a backhoe transmission, right? They have clutch pack solenoids. They are all the same exact solenoid. If I swap that with a good one and it fixes the problem, or the follows the solenoid, right? We're not allowed to tear down that solenoid and figure out why exactly that failed. We just put a new fucking solenoid valve in there and ship it.
Well, so that's most of Cat's similar in that regard. If it's there's like a dividing line to it where you're looking at it and you're going, okay, is it worth the time to learn? But if it's, let's say you have a Huey, or not even Huey, like a high pressure common rail system and the pump fails and it's got 50 hours on it, Cat wants to know why. So they will, if it's brand new, if it's warranty, they will request a failure analysis on it. Or if it is so brand new, or they'll do kind of like follow-on diagnostics. So Cat has a lot of in-house stuff that their dealers are required to have too. TCs, technical communicators, they go out and they're the ones who serve as a Cat representative at times and as the dealer representative. So they're like the bridge between Mama Cat and the dealer. But like a lot of it has to do with, they really, 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 really fucking like follow-on diagnostics and follow-on product support. So, they'll come out with something and it's got a trend for a problem. Well, they want to know everything about it. They want to know the product status report. They want you to pull that oil samples. They want you to send them all the pictures you can. They want as much information from that new product as they can get their fingers on, so that they can see, is this going to be a trendable problem? Is this a manufacturing issue? Is this like the whole point is to try to correct the issue, instead of correcting the problem.
Just the problem.
Right.
Which
So
Deere does a little bit of that. It's just not as in depth, right?
mm-hmm.
We do a lot of report only DTAC cases where we're reporting problems that we already know what failed. We already know that something failed. It's already under warranty. We don't need their permission for it, right? But we're reporting it. And I don't know if you saw my post about that 13.5 that dropped the thrust washers, but so I made a post on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and like all my platforms that I'm going back through and re-explaining a bunch of the jobs that I have, because I took pictures of everything. So I have like thousands of pictures on a hard drive from when I worked in the field. And I found pictures of a 13.5 I did an engine in. Well, it was an engine in an 844 aggregate handler loader. And it had 300 hours on it. The field tech was smart enough to realize that when he went out there for a front main seal leak, that the rear main seal was also leaking. So he was smart enough to check the crankshaft end play, and it's like 200 fucking thousands, which is like not even right. It's like bad. Yeah. Like how the fuck is this thing running, right? So they bring it in and I recheck that, because at this point he had already opened a case. A report only case. So I followed up on that report only case and I rechecked that, took a video of it for them because they wanted a video, took a video of like dial indicator on the damper and you pry it and it like does 2 full circles around the fucking indicator. Like, yeah, that's definitely not spec, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling DTAC and I'm like, I'm pretty sure. And I asked him, like, what's the specification of the thrust washers in this engine? Because I bet that's exactly what it is. I bet that play is a fucking thrust washer clearance specification. So either this wasn't built with the thrust washers at all, because this engine only had 300 hours on it. So either this didn't have thrust washers in it in the first place, or they're the fucking oil pan, right? That's really the only option. And when I sent that in and sent all that information in, Deere made me wait until one of their representatives, same thing, like little in-betweeners, came out and they sat there and watched me all day pull the engine out. They made me wait. And then at the very end of the day, I stayed late to do this. Dropped the oil pan because I'm sitting there telling her, I'm like, dude, your thrust washers are going to be in the oil pan. Your thrust washers are going to be in the oil pan. And she's like, I don't know. We just need to know. You know how satisfying it was to like drop the oil pan and there the fucking thrust washers are laying in the fucking oil pan. And she's like, well, that's all we needed to see and know. So then she left.
So we'll send you a new engine in a week or whatever.
Like, well, we already got an engine. We already had an engine sitting there. Because so an 844H or 844K was what it was. Aggregate handlers are considered production class. So that's how John Deere classes their stuff, right? There's like lawn and turf and smaller operation equipment. And then there's like normal operation equipment, like construction.
Okay.
And then there's production class. Production class is all their either really big shit or like forestry, stuff like that. And so the 844 is considered a production class. And with production class, John Deere has made their own standard that if you have a major component failure, we're like an engine, specifically engines, you're supposed to have that engine within 3 days. At least.
Interesting.
At the most of 3 days. So yeah, I got that engine within like a couple days. And it was there the day before they got there. Because they flew all the way out from Moline to come and watch me take that engine apart.
That's wild. Because I mean, I know, and maybe it's because I don't have any other dealer level experience aside from the Volvo dealer, but that was, I don't even really count that. Like that dealership again, I don't understand. There used to be a Volvo and a Hino dealer, and then Hino dropped in unannounced one day and was like, no. So they pulled their dealership title from them. So now they just do Volvos. But every time Volvo's shown up, though, they've shown up announced. And so there's been like a buddy of mine went from working there, and I commissioned him to come over to Cat, and he's telling me a story how during one of the inspections, they bought a whole extra set of donuts for the night crew, they said. And my dude was eating lunch late, just, trying to catch up. And they were walking through and like, oh, this is the break room, da-da-da. And we even, we take care of our night crew too. And they pointed to the whole box of donuts. And there was one guy who worked night crew. And my guy looks up and goes, you think Jake's going to eat every single one of those? That's way too much for him. And he was like, oh, hi.
Don't you love the little show?
Oh, yeah. The Dog and Pony Show is everything. That's the only way that dealership still has your title.